I went to a great event by YouEqualTech called Crafting Your Story, Beyond Your Personal Brand. These wonderful 3 speakers now are going to be on a panel and are going to take questions from the audience. There were some really interesting questions and answers from the panelists, from Andy, Ifwa and Emma. Their experience of starting startups, selling startups, managing teams was really useful. The Q&A went really well and the audience had a great time. I would like to thank YouEqualTech for organising this amazing event and organising the great speakers. Also, I'd like to thank Onfido for hosting us at the event. They did a great job. The food, the space, everything was excellent. We look forward to next time.
I find with a lot of startups, 2, 3, 4 years in, they sell. Is that the end goal? Is that what's like kind of the trend, where you get it to a certain point, you get the venture capitals to invest, and then once you kind of get to a certain point, you're like, okay, cashing out. Like, what's the deal there?
I guess it depends on what the motive is, right? And I think when me and Julia were on our journey with Bunny Bounce initially and with Taxi Jungle, it's like, it's a great idea, right? And you just kind of follow the idea, you follow that journey. And I think at a certain point we realised, because having a startup is not even about the startup. It's like a journey. It's like a journey of the soul. I don't know how to. It's mad. It's like going. I was talking to someone about this. It's like going. Most people think it's like going into the jungle glamping, but it ain't. You're going there with like a tiny a tiny fork and no clothes. It's crazy. It's just like madness. I learned so much about myself more than anything in that journey. And what I realised was, for me, I need to have. So I think Andy touched on it as well. You need to have a purpose, something that you're passionate about. That doesn't. It's about you, ultimately.
Yeah, I think there's such a complex thing to unravel. But if we look at data, the majority of startups fail straight up. The next batch of the middle majority, I guess, don't actually exit. Like, it's the minority that achieve an exit through like an acquisition or like an IPO. And actually, what we're seeing now is, because there's much bigger funders like SoftBank, a lot of companies are actually staying private for longer. So Uber's just about to IPO, Dropbox IPO the other day, like Airbnb's about to IPO. So they're staying actually like private for much longer. And if you think about it, like, it's all encompassing, like what was described by Emma, like you're 7 days a week sometimes, like it's taking over your life. She talks about going to a doctor and they're offering like depressant pills and going to CBT, but that's a common story actually. Like it becoming all encompassing. We were talking about someone before that doesn't sleep. Like, that's quite common in an unhealthy and a sad way. That it's so all encompassing that you've already got so much personal burn rate, like physical, mental, spiritual burn rate that you can even put into it. Back in the day when they used to fund startups, a VC would actually swap out the founder for a CEO that's actually better and better positioned for growth stage and for getting you to IPO. So as a founder, you actually knew.
For me, I don't have much more to ask that. I'm at the beginning of my journey with the startup, and we're kind of bootstrapped at the moment, so we're self-funded, and we're in that crazy stage that they're talking about. So at the moment I'm getting sweats just listening to what they're saying. This is my life, this is exactly my life. But you wouldn't do this if you didn't have a crazy passion for even if it's just working for yourself, or the actual subject that you're working on. I love what I'm doing, and I didn't immediately think to myself when I started this, okay, I'm going to sell this for X amount of money and exit and live a pretty life. But you have to have an exit strategy because you're running a business. I think it's important to have it in your mind, regardless of whether you want to sell it or not. I think it's important, just because you don't want to be surprised.
Hello, I'm Juliet. Really great presentations from all of you. I've genuinely learnt so much. I have 2 questions. So my first question is, how do you identify these types of people and how do you get them invested in your success?
I think you touched on Andy.
Is that what you're doing, Emma?
No, but you both did, because I really like that point about how you met this lady, Shah, and you got back to her straight away, and she was really invested and she's keen in your journey. So I think Emma has a point as well.
Yeah, thank you. I saw what you did. It's really interesting because as you're speaking, the first person I thought about was my dad. And I remember when he was a minicab driver, like my dad worked at McDonald's, he used to bring us toys from McDonald's from Happy Meal, and I used to think that was my toys. And we had like a room full of those toys, and we were like happy for days, honestly. And then he became a minicab driver, and there's a pivotal moment that, looking back now, was so important, where he paid nearly £1,000 for my brother to go on a helicopter lesson, and he took myself and my younger brother along to just watch that happen. But in that moment, I realize now that he's basically saved maybe a year and a half, 2 years of the money he's making just for that moment, just for us to see that there's life outside of Tottenham. So he was the first sponsor I had in my life that said, you know what, I'm going to invest in you because I can see what you can become, and I want you to realize that we moved from Ghana to England so you can have this opportunity. Then going into my career, there's people that I didn't even mention, like at EY, there was a lady called Isabel Bailey, who was a director going for Partner, Baptism of Hell, but actually looking back, like she's the one that actually trained me so much and taught me that actually it's a relationship building game regardless what career you go into. And I think once you start identifying that people are actually investing time into you that they don't really necessarily have to, you add value and you deliver to show them that actually you're worth investing into. And I think it becomes like a mutual relationship as you continue to do that.
There's a certain point where we were like, okay, we're at the next stage. We need other advisors who can then take us to the next level. And that became difficult because we were like, okay, should it be a music person? Should it be somebody that's more more commercial? And it all depends on where you are, and it will evolve and change as you grow and as you pivot, or there's so many different things. So I think initially it might be, depending on where you are in your journey, I don't know where you are, but certainly in the early days, just people that you think, are on that journey as well and could potentially, help push you forward. I mean, I have got a startup idea, definitely we should talk, because OneTech is all about helping underrepresented founders to actually grow and scale their businesses.
Thank you. Sorry guys, one more question. Maybe everyone can add on that question, but I think you all mentioned sort of being intellectually curious and like that knowledge gap. I think it was F1 that made the point that you can't really be what you can't see, right? So on a daily basis, or do you have a couple of tips of things that we could do to be seeking out information and just bridging that knowledge gap for ourselves, or how do you guys do that?
I suppose I've always been somebody who is an avid kind of reader and really consumes a lot of and gets a lot from watching what other people have done as well. So other than actually looking and watching and finding out what journeys have other people taken, I also network and try and connect with people who are at a further stage in their journey than me, and I think that really helps look for me personally to learn about where can I go with this, and also make those connections and have someone else to go on that business journey with you almost. So I think that's how I kind of get my information.
Hi, I'm Jules. I didn't grow up in London, but I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in Australia, so I can totally identify with all of your stories. I've just got a question around cultivating joy, because it can be quite hard. It sounds like you've had some really hard times and you've learnt some amazing lessons during those hard times, but I'm really interested in tips of how you've picked yourself up and what you do on a daily basis to really find the goodness in stuff.
Naturally I thought of you, Emma, because of what you do.
Yeah, there's so much I could say on that, but I don't think I can say it. but I mean in it, like, because it's just so long-winded. I could talk about retreats. For me, I feel like the deeper you go down the rabbit hole, the more you learn. And my outlook or the way I saw life completely changed. I feel so I meditate every day. My other half meditates for an hour every day, every morning. Yeah, it's just for me, it's about absolute happiness. I realised, through all of this, a lot of even my career, I think Andy touched on it quite a bit when we were talking about your career and not showing your true self. And for me personally, similar kind of stories to both of these guys. And also just maybe chasing things, almost living someone else's life. So living the life that my parents expected me to live. Getting a really good job, thinking, yeah, this is the pinnacle, having a really good salary in a tech corporate world, but realising that it was just devoid, I was devoid of anything, it was soulless. And so for me, it was, when I made this switch, I realised that happiness can't be relative, you can't have these peaks and troughs, you need to find absolute happiness. And I found that through the tools, through knowledge, through, my curiosity came, I'm so bang on curiosity as well. I feel like my curiosity didn't come till 5 years ago. I feel like in some ways I was just sort of just going along with life. Now I feel like I'm actually living life. I don't know how to explain it, everything changed, but it was those lows that actually sparked those changes, if that makes sense. Going through those difficult times.
Like, similar to your question before, actually, Julia, like, I purposely don't look at modern media or what mass media or what groupthink is.
Yes.
So I don't read TechCrunch, I don't read Crunchbase, I don't read books like Bad Blood. I'm not interested. I'm watching, like I said, the Discovery Channel. I'm reading something on art, or I'm reading something on Stoicism, and I'm reading something on Plato, and I'm just interested in thinking different by reading and consuming different content, but then seeing abstract patterns where I actually can apply to what I'm doing. And I feel like that's helped me a lot. The second thing is I've just learned to be present. Like, I'm one of those people that 5 years ago, I used to go to the toilet in the middle of the night and then check my phone. For what? What am I going to action? What am I going to tweet? What am I going to, like, why am I doing that? You know, and I got really annoyed with myself. I was just like, that's actually really stupid. So now when I get into my house, I put my phone on my bed and I leave it so I can be present with my daughter, because she's only going to be 2 once. I'm going to be present with my fiance, because I actually look forward to going home and I look forward to Mondays going into work.
Again, like many people, I meditate. I try and meditate every day. I'm not always successful, so I definitely do that. And, you know, try and get healthy and get exercise as well. But I also think, speaking to, I have a kind of a life coach or business mentor who I speak to on a weekly basis. And I find that there are points in your blind spots that you have about yourself. Having someone who's external to you to be able to give you that insight can be invaluable and help you realise where are you blocking yourself in your achievements and the things that you want to do. And I think I've been doing that for about 2 years now, and I probably wouldn't be here for one, and I wouldn't be up and doing this journey if I hadn't had those insights and someone to talk to about that kind of thing. So I think it's really helpful, it's kind of invaluable. I also do I'm very much into my spiritual kind of people out there, so I read a lot of those books and consume a lot of that kind of information as well. And I find those insights about really understanding who you are or who you aren't, and the importance of that, and realising that everybody's on that kind of same journey. So we talk about imposter syndrome. The fact that so many people have it, everybody's the same. I mean, we can't all be imposters, right? So what is happening? Why is that there? There is something going on that makes us feel like we are faking it, regardless of how knowledgeable we are. That's crazy. I've studied software development for 15 years. I can code anything that anyone asks me to, but I still have a massive imposter syndrome when I go into a work environment. I still think, oh my God, they're going to find out I know nothing. I don't know how to do anything. I built my whole site myself, but I don't know anything. You know, so just realising these kind of things and being on this journey can really help you kind of understand those points and understand that everyone has this shared background and everyone's connected in that way, I think.
Hi, I'm Araba. I have a question for you, Andy. So you mentioned like all the different paths or routes you took in getting to Backstage Capital. I just wanted to find out if you could share a bit about how you kind of like pivoted or transitioned at each point and what motivated you to do that. So from Deloitte from EY to
at EY, like, being transparent with this room because it's an honest, safe room. Okay, I just felt like, hold on a second, I'm about to graduate. You're gonna put me on energy projects with big 6 providers that I'm not interested in, like EDF. No, thank you. I'm too young for that. You're pigeonholing me too early. And actually, I've got a lot of experience from doing this for 2 years. So I'm gonna go and try and do something different. Okay, and at the time, I started a startup with my brother and a few friends, but we had to work part-time to fund it. And that was Mixtape Madness at the time, which my brother still runs today. So at that time, I stepped away from EY and I went backpacking across East Africa. So you know the pivotal moment there was going on that journey again in solitude, and then my father passed away. And then it was just like, I don't know what I'm allowed to say in here or not. And then I was just like, what, fuck it. Like life is too short. Life is too short, and what is the life I want to live, and am I going to take charge of my life or not? And then when I got to the next stage after like building that startup for a while, I worked for a company called World First, and it was such a character building experience because I built a product and UX team in the UK, in Hong Kong, and in Shenzhen. And by this point, I'd worked in so many countries and I saw so many commonalities that I was just like, I actually add value. Like, I can actually quantify and actually see the value I add when I'm problem solving, especially within product management and building products customers love. I'm actually great at that.
I was actually just talking earlier about my own journey recently. I've been sort of rebranding myself, reinventing myself to pitch myself for a job that I actually want. What might be interesting is to hear how many times you've had to tell this story for it to become your truth, and like kind of how you've reinvented things into inflection points rather than, this was a very emotional moment where maybe you were even having, mental or emotional trauma. Because I've found the same on my own journey. To kind of come to that good place, you have to like hit bottom a little bit. So like, how do you reinvent that story, or how do you craft that story? And for me, it's been in the telling of it that it's become more true for me, and I felt more confident in telling it. You obviously feel confident enough to stand in front of people and tell it, so like, I guess, how did you get to that point? I think would be interesting to hear.
Please start from this way. Well, I think hindsight helps a lot. So obviously, after you've gone past those kind of real traumatic downs, and you've reflected on them, some time and distance for me personally has helped. So why did I choose to become CTO of my own company? Why did I go on this journey rather than maybe go up the career ladder? I reached a point where I really wanted to work for myself, and also I was starting to have experiences as a contractor that weren't fantastic. They were, it meant I was hitting a level. I was getting colleagues who I didn't gel with. I was having experiences where, there was conflict and I couldn't understand why. I've never cried at work, but I definitely have cried at home because of some of these experiences. And I got to the point where I just thought, I'm going to have to do my own thing. I'll find something that I'm excited about and do it. And so I'm able to tell this story more because I'm past that now. I'm doing something that I'm really very excited about. I've had those traumas, but I've got this experience now. So it's easy for me to talk about something I'm passionate about as opposed to continue to, just fake it until you make it almost. Now I don't have to fake it. I'm just enjoying it.
That gave me a lot of time to reflect, like the last year and a half. And in doing that, I was able to just sort of like, actually, what happened? Write that story out, like the truth, not the shiny, glossy CV version that we're all kind of forced to put out there, but the actual truth. And I've done that a few times, and I think with this particular story, for example, I think it's the kind of third time in a way, but it came easy because it is the truth, authentic truth, and there's no shame in it at all because it's been accepted.
I think what's interesting for me is like, I'm a big fan of compounding. Like, you hear about compounding interest with money, but there's compounding when it comes to relationships, and there's compounding when it comes to knowledge as well. And we don't think of it in those terms, but there is. And when I do a talk like this, I'm honestly comfortable if I came here to speak to only you, and only you took that away, because the cumulative impact is, if I did 50 talks a year, I've touched 50 people and impacted 50 people. Like I said with Backstage London, I've already invested from one perspective, $500,000 into 5 different startups. On the other perspective, there's $500,000 more, $500,000 more going into underrepresented founders that wasn't before. And I'm comfortable with that because I know that it's a long game, and I know that it's going to be cumulative and it's going to add up. And I think when I accept that with my story, I always try and, like I said, track, so I can look back at what I'm tracking to see what the commonalities were. And actually, I was molded by diversity and inclusion from a young age. They're like, what? But it's true, and I learned it off Wiki, and I just reformed that information and I shared it. But suddenly, I was a memory. And when I went to Elixir, they asked me, why me and 3? And I knew they were going to ask me that ahead of the interview. So I shared why you should hire me from my friend's perspective, why you should hire me from my parents' perspective, and why you should hire me from my colleagues' perspectives. And I got a reference from each, and they literally read it, and they thought, wow, that was different.
Hi, I'm Afia, and I work here at Onfido. I have a question around showing up with your true and authentic self. How do you advise a younger person to show up as their authentic self when you have things like culture fit and VC mirroring investment? How would you advise a younger person to show up as their authentic self?
Good question. Good questions, you know.
Dreaded
Do you know what? There's 2 parts to that though. Like, were you gonna say something?
No. I'm looking forward to the answer.
There's 2 parts to that. One is we each have a responsibility when we go into an environment to educate that environment. Like, I didn't read books about characters that I identify with as I grew up. I didn't watch or consume content on the media or in movies with characters I identified with, and you should know that. You know, like there's a black woman I worked with 7 years ago who said that the reason I don't attend events is because where I live there's no well-lit streets and therefore I don't want to go home late. But if you don't know that, you don't have the context, you're going to make assumptions. And we often do that at work, we're very lazy. We onboard people, we don't get to know them. Like, it's our duties when we go into a workplace to start having those conversations and for all of us to be little minions and to start like really having a ripple effect on making that change so that it's more comfortable when your brother comes on internship or comes to this opportunity that they're more receptive. Like, a lot of people are focusing on this recruitment issue when it comes to diversity and inclusion. The real issue is actually with retention. There's such a leaky bucket because people don't feel at home at work. You know, and one of the best things you could probably do to your brother is be honest with him. Like, the world is not all rosy. They're not all going to accept you. They're all going to feel like you're actually going to have to flex your style and you're going to have mature conversations with them. There's going to be a sign of maturity on your part to have that conversation with them at such a young age. And actually, you're a young leader by doing that. And it's about empowering him by giving him a different perspective on how he sees himself in that environment. And that's what I wish someone told me about 10 years ago when I was like 40% of myself.
Bring him here.
Yeah.